Most people believe they are searching for truth, but what they are actually searching for is psychological stability. The mind does not ask, "Is this accurate?" It asks, "Is this safe?" A belief that protects your sense of self, your social standing, or your worldview feels calming. A belief that threatens those things feels dangerous. So when evidence challenges us, the discomfort is not intellectual, it is emotional. And in that moment, the brain quietly chooses relief over reality. Imagine discovering that a long-held opinion about your career, your relationship, or even your political stance is flawed. The evidence is clear. Yet instead of adjusting, you immediately generate explanations. You reinterpret the data. You question the source. You tell yourself a story that keeps your original belief intact. It feels logical. It feels justified. But what you are actually feeling is the easing of tension. The lie is comforting because it reduces internal conflict. Neuroscience helps explain this reaction. When information threatens your identity, the amygdala activates as if facing physical danger. Brain imaging studies show that social rejection and belief challenges stimulate regions associated with pain processing. In other words, being wrong does not just bruise the ego, it triggers a threat response. The body shifts into defense mode. Under that state, accuracy becomes secondary. Protection becomes the priority. Beliefs are not just opinions floating in isolation. They are structural beams in the architecture of identity. They connect to your memories, your community, your past decisions, and your sense of competence. To dismantle a belief is to destabilize a part of yourself. That is why admitting error can feel like losing ground. The mind resists not because it is stupid, but because it is trying to preserve coherence. Stability feels like survival. This leads to a deeper question. If discomfort signals potential growth, why does the brain construct such elaborate defenses against it? Why are we so skilled at justifying what protects us, even when it misleads us? The answer may be unsettling. Cognitive bias is not a flaw in human design. It is part of the design itself. And understanding that architecture is the first step toward seeing how easily we believe what soothes us. Cognitive bias is often described as irrational thinking. But that description misses something important. Bias is not a random flaw. It is an efficiency system. The brain operates under limited time, limited energy, and overwhelming information. To function, it relies on shortcuts. Psychologists call this bounded rationality. Instead of analyzing every detail, the mind selects patterns that feel coherent and familiar. These shortcuts once helped us survive fast-moving environments. But in complex modern contexts, the same shortcuts quietly distort perception. One of the most powerful examples is confirmation bias. When we encounter information that supports what we already believe, the brain responds with subtle reward signals. Studies suggest that belief-consistent data can activate dopaminergic pathways linked to pleasure and reinforcement. Agreement feels good. It creates a sense of validation and certainty. Meanwhile, contradictory evidence requires more cognitive effort from the prefrontal cortex, so the brain filters. It highlights what fits and downplays what does not. The result feels balanced, even when it is not. Cognitive dissonance adds another layer. When two conflicting ideas collide, the anterior cingulate cortex detects the inconsistency. That detection generates psychological discomfort. The mind interprets inconsistency as instability. Instead of tolerating that tension, it moves quickly to resolve it. Often, the resolution is not updating the belief, but reshaping the interpretation of new information. We tell ourselves the evidence is flawed, the context is different, or the exception proves the rule. The goal is not truth. The goal is internal harmony. Motivated reasoning deepens the pattern. We do not passively receive information. We actively construct arguments that protect prior commitments. In debates about career decisions, relationships, or politics, people rarely ask, "What is correct?" They ask, "How can I defend what I already stand for?" Intelligence does not eliminate this tendency. In many cases, it strengthens it. Higher cognitive ability can mean more sophisticated justifications. The reasoning feels analytical, but the destination was chosen before the analysis began. Then there is the bias blind spot, the belief that other people are biased while we remain objective. This illusion reinforces itself. We notice flawed reasoning in others because it does not threaten our identity. Our own distortions remain invisible because they feel like common sense. Awareness alone does not dissolve bias, because bias operates beneath conscious intention. It is embedded in how the brain organizes reality. And without recognizing this hidden layer, we continue believing that our comforting conclusions are simply rational conclusions. To understand why comforting lies feel so convincing, we need to look at how the brain builds reality in the first place. According to predictive processing theory, the brain is not a passive receiver of information. It is a prediction machine. It constantly generates models about how the world works, then compares incoming data to those models. When reality matches the prediction, the system runs smoothly. When it does not, the brain experiences surprise, or what scientists call prediction error. Reducing that error becomes the priority. Updating a belief requires energy. It means revising the internal model, recalculating expectations, and tolerating uncertainty during the transition. That process is metabolically expensive. So the brain often chooses a cheaper solution. Instead of adjusting the model, it adjusts the interpretation of the data. If new information threatens a core assumption, the mind reframes it, dismisses it, or isolates it as an exception. This preserves coherence while minimizing cognitive cost. The lie survives because it is efficient. Dopamine reinforces this stability. The ventral striatum, part of the reward system, responds not only to tangible rewards but also to social affirmation and belief confirmation. When others agree with us, when our views are validated, small reward signals strengthen the neural pathways associated with those beliefs. Over time, repetition wires rigidity. The more a belief is socially reinforced, the more automatic it becomes. What began as an opinion gradually feels like an unquestionable fact. Identity protective cognition adds another structural layer. Social identity theory shows that belonging to a group shapes perception itself. When a belief is tied to group membership, challenging that belief risks social exclusion. The brain interprets exclusion as a survival threat, because for most of human history, isolation meant danger. As a result, perception bends to protect affiliation. Evidence that threatens the group is scrutinized more harshly. Evidence that supports it is accepted quickly. Loyalty quietly overrides neutrality. Even memory is not immune. Research on reconstructive memory demonstrates that recall is not a replay of stored footage. It is a reconstruction influenced by current beliefs and emotions. When a belief becomes central to identity, past events are subtly rewritten to maintain narrative consistency. Failures are reframed, warnings are minimized, and supportive details are amplified. The story of who we are remains intact. And because memory feels vivid and personal, the comforting lie feels historically justified. Comforting lies rarely stay abstract. They shape decisions. Consider the sunk cost effect. Someone stays in a failing business, a draining relationship, or an unfulfilling career because they have already invested years of effort. Walking away would mean admitting misjudgment. The brain interprets that admission as a threat to competence and identity. So it reframes losses as temporary setbacks. It focuses on selective signs of hope. Quitting feels like collapse, even when persistence quietly compounds the damage. In the digital world, these biases scale rapidly. Algorithms are designed to maximize engagement, not accuracy. They learn what you respond to and deliver more of it. Each like, share, and click feeds a feedback loop. Confirmation bias becomes industrialized. The reward circuitry lights up with every piece of aligned content. Over time, opposing perspectives fade from view. The environment begins to mirror your internal model. It feels like consensus, but it is personalization. Relationships follow similar patterns. When attachment bonds form, perception shifts. Red flags are reinterpreted as misunderstandings. Inconsistencies are excused as stress or timing. Attachment theory suggests that maintaining connection often overrides objective evaluation. The fear of loss amplifies motivated reasoning. Protecting the bond becomes more urgent than confronting reality. Love, in this sense, can narrow perception. The narrative that preserves emotional security feels safer than the truth that threatens it. Institutions are not immune. Groupthink emerges when cohesion is valued over critical evaluation. Classic conformity experiments showed that individuals will publicly agree with incorrect judgments to avoid standing out. In workplaces or leadership teams, dissent can feel risky, so warning signs are minimized. Doubts remain unspoken. When everyone appears confident, collective bias masquerades as collective wisdom. The system reinforces itself because agreement signals stability. The long-term consequences are subtle but cumulative. When reality repeatedly contradicts defended beliefs, anxiety increases. There is a constant need to reinterpret events to maintain coherence. This fragmentation weakens self-awareness. Instead of adapting to the environment, the mind works harder to defend its narrative. Comforting lies offer short-term relief, but they demand ongoing maintenance. And the cost of that maintenance grows each time reality refuses to cooperate. If cognitive bias is built into the system, then growth begins with redefining discomfort. Psychological tension is not always a signal of danger. Often it is a signal of updating. Neuroplasticity shows that the brain can rewire itself in response to new information, but only when it remains open long enough to process it. The first step is resisting the urge to immediately resolve contradiction. Discomfort can be evidence that your internal model is expanding, not collapsing. Metacognition becomes the counterbalance. Instead of asking, "Is this true?" the more powerful question is, "Why do I want this to be true?" That shift turns attention inward. It exposes emotional investments behind seemingly rational positions. Slowing down automatic reactions gives the prefrontal cortex time to evaluate rather than defend. Structured reflection, such as deliberately listing arguments against your own view, interrupts motivated reasoning. Awareness alone is not enough, but deliberate cognitive friction changes the process. Another essential skill is tolerance for ambiguity. Many biases thrive on the need for certainty. The brain prefers a clear answer, even an inaccurate one, over open-ended doubt. Yet mature cognition allows competing possibilities to coexist. Research on uncertainty tolerance links it to resilience and adaptive decision-making. Holding multiple hypotheses reduces the urgency to cling to a single narrative. It transforms uncertainty from a threat into a space for refinement. Separating identity from belief weakens the threat response at its root. When beliefs become fused with self-worth, any challenge feels personal. But if beliefs are treated as working hypotheses rather than defining traits, updates become less destabilizing. This cognitive distancing reduces amygdala activation and makes revision less emotionally charged. You are not your opinions. You are the system evaluating them. That distinction creates psychological flexibility. The final tension remains internal. Which belief triggers the strongest emotional defense in you? Where do you react fastest, argue hardest, or feel most threatened? Those reactions often mark the places where identity and bias intersect. Seeking truth is not a natural reflex. It is a disciplined practice against the brain's default settings. And the ability to question what comforts you may be the clearest sign that your mind is no longer running on autopilot.